My name is Thomas Lindsay, and I'm Senior Counsel for the Center for Democratic and Environmental Rights. So the solution to getting out of the box is to break the box. And breaking the box means moving forward with enough local lawmaking in enough places that it begins to threaten the state constitutional framework that's been put in place that creates a lot of the sides of the box. And then eventually for those state constitutional frameworks to be challenged enough that a movement is created that begins to challenge the federal constitutional framework around these doctrines. And so what does that look like in practice? Well, it means that folks in states currently that are working to pioneer this new kind of municipal environmental protection model within their cities, towns, villages, and counties join hands together to begin changing their own state constitutions. The great thing about the box, to the extent that there are great things about the box, is that two of the doctrines, preemption and Dillon's rule, are actually controlled by state law, which means that you can begin dismantling two of the sides of the box by changing the state constitution itself to essentially recognize a right of local community self-government. If you recognize a right of local community self-government within the state constitutional framework, you can automatically erode and eliminate the two sides of the box that deal with preemption and Dillon's rule. The other two sides of the box are federally rooted. So whether that's corporate constitutional personhood rights or corporate commerce clause rights, there's going to have to be changes that take effect within the federal constitutional structure that affect those things. The idea is that enough people become active at the local level to force that state constitutional change to happen, and then for that to force the federal constitutional change to happen. Today, you have efforts in Oregon and Florida and Colorado and New Hampshire and Pennsylvania to introduce and have votes on amendments to those state constitutions in those states that would recognize a right of local community self-government within those state constitutional structures. And that only came about because people within those states began to join hands who had done that local lawmaking, who have run up against these legal doctrines, who then took a step back and said to themselves, we need to change that state constitutional structure to, in essence, authorize the adoption of these local laws at the municipal level. So this work isn't dogmatic in scope. It's actually about communities deciding for themselves what they want. It's about local control within a community to decide what happens within that community. And it means, for example, with natural gas pipelines, that communities have the power to say no to a running of the pipelines through their particular community. That will in turn trigger responsibility by the actors, economic actors and corporations putting these projects in, to at least sit down at a negotiating table with the folks that have the authority to say no to the project coming through, and yielding in some cases, not yielding in others, but at least being at the table, which right now they're not even at the table when these projects come through the community. So it's not about stopping economic growth. It's not about inhibiting economic growth. It's about making sure that whatever economic development happens in the community is one that safeguards the health, safety, and welfare of the community or the natural environment and ecosystem that exists there. So one of the arguments that we get against home rule and local control is that there's nothing that stops a Aryan nation from taking over a locality and then banning African Americans or banning homosexuals or banning gay marriage or banning abortion, those types of things. It's important to understand that what we're talking about with this right of local community self-government is the ability to set standards more stringently than the state. So in other words, the state and federal constitutional protections becoming the floor, but expanding out rights protections above that floor. So it's not allowing or authorizing communities to drop below those state and federally constitutionally guaranteed rights, but the ability to grow above it. So what does a right to sustainable agriculture look like? What does a right to sustainable energy production look like? That doesn't include fossil fuel infrastructure or fossil fuel production. What does a right to clean air and clean water that's actually legally enforceable look like? How do we establish standards on top of state and federal regulatory programs that actually expand out protections for the natural environment and for the communities themselves? That's what we're talking about when we talk about right of local community self-government, is exercised in those ways, but not exercised in ways which degrade existing state and federal constitutional rights platforms.